Drifting in silence, the stars outside the pod did not move. They only shimmered, silent and distant, as if they didn't care. Inside the escape pod, the air was cold. The lights flickered weakly. A soft mechanical hum was the only sound. Until the baby cried. Lyria held the child close, her long fingers trembling. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes deep violet, wide with fear. The baby, wrapped in thin silver cloth, was no more than a few weeks old. Its tiny face was flushed, its breath shallow. She whispered softly to calm him. "Shh, we are safe. For now." But they weren't safe. Not really. Their ship had been hit during the rebellion. Her people had turned against each other. And the sky above their home burned. She had no weapons, no allies, and no home left. Just this old pod, barely working, drifting in space. Lyria had launched the distress beacon 4 days ago. Every 6 hours, she repeated the call in 3 different languages. No one answered. Maybe no one cared, or maybe they were avoiding her. A single mother. An alien fugitive. A burden. She looked down at the child, his small hand wrapped around her finger. He was warm, but not warm enough. The pod's heater was dying. Oxygen was thinning. Food was already gone. Only water remained. Just enough for 1 more day. Lyria leaned her head back and closed her eyes. "Please," she whispered into the silence. "If anyone is out there, help us." Miles away, something stirred. A small cargo vessel picked up the faint signal. It had been wandering empty space for days, scanning wreckage and forgotten debris for salvage. It was not a rescue ship. It was not part of any fleet. It was owned by one man. A human. The pod drifted past an asteroid field, its outer hull scratched and dented. Lyria sat motionless, her back against the cold metal wall. The baby had stopped crying. Now he only whimpered, his body hot with fever. She knew the fever was dangerous. She had tried everything, rubbing his skin with cloth, whispering old lullabies, holding him close. Nothing worked. Her tears had dried up 2 days ago. Now only the silence cried with her. A sharp beep cut through the silence. Lyria blinked, then sat up quickly. The console flashed. It was a docking signal. Something was pulling them in. Her breath caught in her throat. Her first instinct was to hide, but there was nowhere to hide in this tiny pod. The pod shook gently. Clamps locked around its frame. The beacon light turned green. Someone was bringing her in. Lyria clutched the baby and curled around him. Her thin body shielded him like armor. "Don't hurt us," she whispered. "Please." A hiss of pressure. The pod door opened. A tall figure stood at the entrance. The light behind him cast a shadow over his face. He was covered in dark clothing, a worn jacket and thick boots. A breathing mask hung around his neck. He stepped forward slowly. His eyes scanned the pod. They landed on the blue-skinned woman holding a child. He stopped. His name was Rafe Carter. Once he was a soldier. Now he was just a man trying to survive. He had seen many things in the war. Burned colonies, broken ships, and the empty eyes of the dead. But he had never seen this. An alien mother. Holding a baby. Alive. Rafe didn't raise his weapon. He didn't shout. He knelt down. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Lyria didn't answer. She only held the baby tighter. He reached into his pack and pulled out a bottle of clean water. He set it down on the floor between them and backed away. Lyria looked at the bottle, then at him. Her lips moved slowly. Sick." Rafe frowned. He looked at the child. Red skin, shallow breaths, trembling fingers. He didn't know alien medicine, but he knew that look. He had seen human children die like that too. He stepped forward again. "Let me scan him," he said, and held up a small device. It beeped softly. Lyria didn't stop him. The scanner finished. Numbers blinked. Rafe's face grew serious. "He needs help," he said. "Now." He turned and tapped a command into his wrist device. "There's a med station nearby," he said. "Old but working." Lyria looked at him unsure. "You trust me?" he asked gently. She looked down at the baby, then back at the human. She gave a single silent nod. The ship hummed as it left the asteroid field. Rafe placed the pod into the cargo bay and adjusted the coordinates. The med station was 20 minutes away, maybe less if the engines held. Behind him, Lyria sat beside her child. She had not spoken another word, but she watched Rafe closely. Her fingers gripped the cloth around her baby like it was her last shield. Rafe didn't ask questions, not yet. First he had to save the baby. He stared out into the stars. "What are you running from?" he muttered. But he'd soon find out, because Lyria's past wasn't gone. It was coming for all of them, and fast. The human rescuer. The ship was quiet as it glided through deep space, but inside tension filled every corner. Lyria sat beside her baby in the corner of the cargo bay. The walls around her were cold and made of steel, covered with strange human tools and crates she did not understand. Still, it was safer than the escape pod. Her baby stirred in her arms, his fever high, his breath raspy. The human had not spoken much since they boarded. He only gave her a blanket, some water, and returned to the controls. He moved like a man who had seen too much war, his shoulders heavy, his face unreadable. His name, he said once, was Rafe Carter. Nothing more. No rank, no home. Just a name. Lyria had never met a human before, only heard of them through stories and warnings. Her people believed humans were unpredictable, dangerous, cold, but this one had saved her. He could have left her to drift. Instead, he pulled her in. She held her baby tighter and whispered into his tiny ear, "Stay with me. We are not alone now." In the cockpit, Rafe stared at the navigation screen. The old med station floated near a dead moon, abandoned during the last border war. It was risky to dock there. The place had seen combat, and who knew what systems still worked. But he had no choice. The baby needed help. Fast. As he adjusted the coordinates, Rafe stole a glance through the security camera. The alien woman was still curled up, watching him from the floor. She looked scared but strong, tired but not broken. Her skin shimmered under the dim lights, a soft blue glow. The baby was smaller than he expected, weak, maybe days away from death if he didn't act fast. He spoke softly to himself. What the hell did I just bring on board? His ship, the Rustwing, was never meant for passengers. It was a scrap runner patched together with stolen parts and hope. But Rafe had a rule. Never ignore a distress call, no matter who sent it. 20 minutes later, the med station came into view. It looked like a dark, floating grave, half of it damaged, the other half silent. Broken antennas spun uselessly, and the docking bay lights blinked red and white as if they too had forgotten how to live. Rafe brought the ship in carefully. The auto-dock system hissed and locked in place. The hull groaned as metal touched metal. Atmosphere filters activated slowly, flickering on after years of sleep. He stood at the entrance of the cargo bay and looked at Lyria. "Follow me," he said. "Stay close. Don't touch anything unless I say." Lyria stood up slowly. Her legs were weak and she swayed for a moment. Rafe stepped forward to steady her, but she pulled back. Not out of anger, just fear. She nodded and whispered, "I understand." Together they moved through the connecting tunnel. The doors opened with a hiss, revealing the long hallway of the med station. Old blood stained the walls. Flickering lights buzzed above them. It smelled like metal, rust, and death. Lyria's steps were light and quiet. Rafe walked ahead, scanning for threats. He had been here once, long ago. He remembered the battles, remembered the screams. This place held ghosts, even if none were still breathing. In the main chamber, he found what he needed. The emergency med bed still worked, barely. "Put him here," he said, gesturing to the table. Lyria hesitated. The machine looked old, sharp, and alien, but the child moaned softly, his skin now pale and cold. She laid him gently on the table. Rafe activated the scanner. Green lines ran across the baby's body. A low tone beeped with each heartbeat. "He has a deep fever," Rafe muttered. "Lungs inflamed. Blood infection starting." Lyria didn't understand every word, but she saw his face, serious, focused. "Can you fix him?" she asked, voice cracking. "Maybe," Rafe said, "if this damn place holds together." He opened an old locker and pulled out 2 injector vials, one marked with human symbols, the other with a galactic code. He turned to her. "I've seen this infection before. We used to treat wounded civilians after raids. This might work, please," Lyria whispered. "Save him." Rafe nodded once. He injected the serum into the child's neck. The baby let out a sharp cry, then fell silent. The machines beeped steadily. Lyria's hands trembled. She wanted to scream, to do something, but she only watched. "Now we wait," Rafe said, leaning against the wall. "Either it works, or it doesn't." Silence returned. But it was different now. Not empty, not cold. It was the silence of breath, of tired hearts, of hope that had been hiding in the dark for too long. Hours passed. The baby's breathing slowly grew stronger. His color returned. Lyria pressed her forehead to his and whispered blessings in her native tongue. Rafe watched quietly from the other side of the room. He didn't smile, not yet, but his hand no longer rested on his weapon. He sat down beside a broken console and stared at the ceiling. "You're lucky I found you," he said. "Space doesn't care. Most folks don't either." Lyria looked up at him. Her voice was soft. "You cared." Rafe didn't answer, but something inside him shifted. He didn't know why he saved them. He just knew it felt right. Outside the station, in the void of space, something else moved. Another ship. Silent. Watching. Not friendly. Ghosts of the past. The med station was old, but alive again. Barely. Flickering lights cast pale shadows across the metal walls as if remembering what it was like to be full of life. Now only 2 adults and a small child breathed inside its quiet corridors. Lyria sat curled next to the med bed, the soft rise and fall of her baby's chest giving her strength. His fever had broken during the last sleep cycle. Color had returned to his cheeks. His fingers had started moving again. For the first time in days, she let herself close her eyes just for a moment and drift into shallow rest. Rafe didn't rest. He moved through the station like a man chasing ghosts. He knew this place. Not from old maps or war reports. No, he had fought here. Long ago, when the war between humans and her kind was still burning across the stars, this station had been a checkpoint. A field hospital. Then, a slaughterhouse. He walked through the mess hall, now filled with debris and broken furniture. His boots echoed with each step. He passed a wall where names were once written in blood, enemy and ally alike. And in his mind he heard them again. The screams. The orders. The silence after the guns stopped. In the corner of one room, an old human combat helmet lay split in half. Rafe picked it up. It still smelled of smoke and sweat. His fingers tightened around it, knuckles white. He had lost friends here, killed strangers here, saved civilians here. And now, years later, he was back, with the enemy's child clinging to life on his bed. He looked down at the cracked floor. "Funny how the galaxy works," he muttered. He returned to the med chamber. Lyria was awake now. Her eyes followed him as he walked in. Not scared, just curious. She tilted her head. "You know this place," she said gently. Rafe gave a small nod. "I fought here," he replied. "Your people tried to hold it. We wanted it for the supply line. Everyone lost." Lyria lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry," Rafe raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because this place smells of pain," she whispered. "And you carry it with you." He didn't speak for a long time. Instead, he turned to check the medbed monitors again. The baby's heart rate had stabilized. Readings looked normal, whatever that meant for her kind. Lyria broke the silence. "He has no name yet," she said softly. Rafe looked at her. "Where I'm from," she continued, "we wait until the child survives their first sunfall. Then we name them. I wasn't sure he would make it. But now," she looked down at the child, her fingers brushing his tiny cheek. "I want to call him Kavir." "What does it mean?" Rafe asked, in my tongue. "It means light that returns." Rafe nodded slowly. "Fits." As the station systems powered on, unnoticed protocols began to stir. Old sensors, long silent, blinked awake. Data packets burst out into the vacuum. Automated logs, emergency signals, encrypted alerts. Most vanished into deep space. But one didn't. It reached a ship. A ship that wasn't supposed to be listening. Somewhere far off, a long black vessel drifted just outside the outer belt of the derelict sector. It bore no official markings. It had no beacon, no registry, just armor, weapons, and silence. On its bridge, a scarred human sat alone, one metal arm resting on the controls. His name was Captain Varys Dorn. He once served in the elite shock forces of the human Dominion, until they discharged him for crimes too dirty to list. Now, he worked for money, he hunted refugees, he sold bodies, and he especially hated aliens. The med station's weak distress echo had triggered an old surveillance thread in his network. He leaned forward, reading the transmission. 1 life sign. No, 2. No, wait, 3. He narrowed his eyes. 1 was human. 2 weren't. He smiled, teeth yellow and sharp. "Bounty rates just got better," he muttered. He keyed his second in command. "Prepare the boarding crew. Full armor. Stunners. and bring the cryo cages. Target? The voice replied. Female alien with a child, Dorn said. And whoever's protecting them. He leaned back in his seat. I want them alive. Back on the med station, Lyria tried to rest again, but something tugged at her nerves. A sharp instinct, old and primal. Her kind had survived centuries of war. Fear lived in their bones. She looked at Rafe. Someone's coming, she said suddenly. He froze. What? I don't know how I know, but I feel it. Rafe turned to the main console and ran a scan. Faint energy pulses, too faint for normal ships. But he had seen this pattern before. Stealth drives. Predator class, he cursed under his breath. You were right. He grabbed a small weapon case from under the med bed. Inside, an old rifle, a belt of tools, and a small explosive charge. Lyria stood up, holding Kavir close. Her eyes burned with new fire. What do we do? She asked. Rafe looked at her, no longer seeing just an alien mother, but someone who refused to give up. We fight, he said. Outside in the dark, the black ship moved silently toward the broken station. Death was coming. But this time, it would not be easy. A hunter's approach, the silence around the med station was no longer peaceful. It had become a kind of tension, a waiting breath before the storm. Old metal walls creaked. Systems buzzed softly, and somewhere in the shadows, ancient cameras blinked like tired eyes. Rafe stood at the edge of the corridor, weapon slung across his chest, eyes fixed on the main display. Lyria stood behind him, cradling her baby. Her body was still, but her heart pounded like a war drum. The scanner's flickering readout showed a slow, steady signal creeping closer. It wasn't broadcasting any ID codes. No name, no flag, no distress call. Just silent movement. Deliberate and controlled. Rafe didn't need a name to recognize that kind of ship. Mercs, he said, voice low. Lyria looked up at him. Mercs? Paid hunters, not soldiers. Worse, he replied. They don't follow rules. They don't take prisoners unless there's money in it. And if there's a mother and child on board. His words trailed off, but she understood. Her arms tightened around Kavir. The baby let out a small sound, not quite a cry. She kissed his forehead gently. We have to run, she whispered. No, Rafe said. There's nowhere to go. They'll jam the escape routes and dock right into the main hatch. He walked over to a crate and yanked it open. Inside, wires, old explosives, a few shield cells, and a small tool drone buzzed weakly to life. Rafe pulled out a pulse mine and started configuring it. Then we hide, she asked. Rafe shook his head slowly. We stall, he said, and we fight. On the black ship outside, Captain Dorn stood at the front viewport, watching the small station grow closer. His second-in-command, a woman with a metal jaw and cold eyes, handed him the latest scan report. Life forms confirmed, she said. 1 adult human, 1 alien female, and the child. Any defense systems? He asked. None, just residual power and weak structural integrity. This place won't hold a serious blast, he grinned. Then we go quiet. Breach and take them fast. He turned to the boarding crew. 6 armored figures stood ready, stun rifles, anti-psi shields, shock collars. Each one trained to extract, contain, and deliver targets alive. Remember, Dorn said, the woman's valuable. The kid, and even more. But don't kill the human unless you have to. If he's protecting them, someone's paying him. He paused. And if he resists, a wicked grin spread across his face. Make him regret it. Back inside the med station, Rafe planted the first trap near the docking bay doors. The pulse mine would disable electronics for 10 seconds when triggered, just enough to buy time. He set another one near the corridor junction, where the old bulkhead curved into the heart of the station. Lyria watched him work, her eyes sharp and focused. You've done this before, she said. Too many times, he answered. But it's different now. Why? He glanced at her. Because this time I'm not doing it for a war. I'm doing it for someone who actually matters. She didn't reply, but her eyes softened. Where should I go? She asked. Rafe pointed to a sealed med closet near the infirmary. Hide there. Stay quiet. Only come out if I tell you. No matter what happens, she hesitated. What if you don't come back? Rafe didn't answer at first. He looked down the hall, toward the blinking red light of the docking signal. Then slowly he turned back to her. Then you take the kid and you run, he said. You find a way off this rock. Live long enough to give him a future. Lyria's lips trembled, but she nodded. She kissed her baby one more time, whispered his name, and slipped into the closet. The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. Rafe stood alone now, but he didn't feel alone. Not anymore. The docking clamps screamed as they engaged. Metal slammed against metal. The sound echoed through the hollow station. Sparks fell like rain on the other side. Captain Dorn smiled as the hatch opened. The corridor ahead was dim, quiet, too quiet. The lead merc stepped in, and the floor pulsed blue. The pulse mine exploded silently. Systems blinked. Weapons shorted. Visors cracked. The first merc dropped, twitching. "Trap!" someone shouted. Rafe opened fire. Bolts of plasma ripped through the air, striking armor, walls, crates. Smoke filled the corridor. 2 mercs fell. The others scrambled for cover. Rafe moved like a shadow, quick, trained, focused. He knew every inch of this place. Every shortcut, every weakness. It was his battlefield now, but they weren't amateurs. A grenade rolled across the floor. Rafe dove back just as it exploded, tearing through part of the wall. He coughed, blood in his mouth. His shoulder burned, but he got up. He always got up. Inside the med closet, Lyria held her breath. She heard nothing, no voices, no cries, just distant rumbles and static. Her hand covered Kavir's mouth gently. The child stirred but didn't cry. She closed her eyes and whispered again, "Stay quiet, my light. Your protector is still fighting." Outside, Rafe was losing ground. The mercs had regrouped. Dorn himself entered the station now, walking with purpose. "I don't know who you are," he shouted down the corridor, "but you're in my way." Rafe leaned against a wall, bleeding. Breathing hard, he smirked. "Get in line," he whispered to himself. He had one last charge, one last chance. As the footsteps grew louder, he armed it, and somewhere behind steel walls and quiet prayers, a baby slept, unaware that the future of 2 worlds was now being written in blood and fire. Fire and flesh. The station had become a furnace of metal and rage. Sparks flew from broken panels. Smoke curled along the low ceilings, clinging to the walls like ghosts. Rafe's vision blurred from pain, but his steps remained steady. Blood dripped down his arm, staining the grip of his weapon. Still, he moved, like a man who had nothing left to lose and one last thing left to protect. The mercs advanced through the corridors like wolves, clearing debris with practiced aggression. Their armor was heavy, their faces hidden behind mirrored masks. The stench of burned circuits filled the air. Behind them, Captain Dorn walked slow and confident, like he already owned everything ahead of him. But he didn't own Rafe. Not yet. Rafe ducked into a storage bay, planting his final explosive on the ceiling vent. It wasn't a bomb meant to kill. It was meant to collapse, to cut off the only access route to the med wing where Lyria and her child were hiding. It would fall behind him, sealing the corridor in rubble. He pressed the charge. A deep hum rose in the air. Then thunder. Metal screamed. The hallway behind him caved in. Dust and fire rushing outward like a beast unleashed. 2 mercs were caught in it, flung into darkness. The others stumbled back, coughing, shouting. Rafe didn't stop to watch. He pushed forward through the smoke, deeper into the heart of the station. Elsewhere, behind a heavy medbay wall, Lyria rocked slowly with her child. Her back was against the cold frame of the closet, the hum of the station trembling through her bones. She could feel the walls shudder with every blast. Each one sent fear crawling through her skin. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She prayed. In her language, her people called it the voice of the roots. A silent whisper passed from mother to child during war, meant to give them strength. She whispered it now into Kavir's tiny ear. The child breathed steadily. The fever had not returned. But the danger had never left. She could hear footsteps outside. Fast, heavy, then silence. Too much silence. Her eyes widened. Rafe reached the infirmary door just as a merc rounded the corner. Their eyes met, no words, no mercy. The merc raised his rifle. Rafe dove. The blast scorched the wall behind him, sending sparks flying. He rolled to his feet and fired back, catching the attacker in the leg. Armor cracked. The merc fell with a scream. Another figure emerged from the smoke, a different shape, taller, slower. Captain Dorn. He raised no weapon. Instead, he walked forward, calm, confident. One hand held out in mock peace. "That's enough," he said, voice like gravel. "You're hurt. Alone. And you're not getting paid to die for some alien girl and her spawn." Rafe spat blood on the floor. I'm not doing this for money, he said. Dorn chuckled. Then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Behind Rafe, the door to the med closet clicked open. Lyria stepped out, Kavir cradled in her arms. Don't, Rafe hissed, still facing Dorn, but she had seen something he hadn't. Behind Dorn, more mercs. 2 of them, flanking him like shadows. They were raising their weapons. She screamed, Rafe! He turned fast, faster than pain should have allowed, and fired. 2 bolts, clean, sharp. Both mercs dropped before they could shoot. But the moment cost him. Dorn moved like a predator. His metal arm whipped forward, striking Rafe in the side of the head. The world tilted. Rafe staggered, hit the ground hard. Blood rushed from a fresh cut across his brow. Lyria cried out, clutching Keever tighter, backing into the corner. Dorn stepped over Rafe, standing between her and the door. You, he growled, are worth more than a dozen transport freighters. They said you were extinct. Guess not. He reached for her, and that's when Kavir opened his eyes. It started as a glow. Faint. Golden. From the baby's chest. Lyria gasped. Dorn froze. Even Rafe, half-conscious on the floor, blinked through the blur. The glow pulsed outward. Soft at first. Then sharp Rafe's scanner blinked red, unidentified energy spike. Kavir began to hum. No, not hum. Resonate. His small body was glowing with threads of light, spreading from his skin like roots of energy. It crawled up Lyria's arms, through her bones, into the air around them. Dorn screamed, stumbling back. His armor began to spark. His metal arm sizzled. The station's lights burst one by one, and then silence. Rafe awoke in the dark. His head pounded. Something warm trickled down his neck, but he was alive. He groaned, pushing himself up. The lights flickered weakly. The corridor was scorched, walls blackened. Dorn was gone. His metal arm lay on the floor, twitching, and in the middle of the hallway stood Lyria, her child in her arms. And around them, peace. What happened? Rafe asked, voice dry. Lyria turned toward him slowly. Her eyes shimmered. He protected us, she said. He's more than I thought. Rafe stared at the child. Kavir blinked, calm and quiet. A strange warmth filled the air, and deep inside Rafe's heart, something changed. He had seen fire, he had felt pain, but for the first time in years, he felt something close to hope. The baby's secret, the silence that followed the explosion of light, was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of awe, of something ancient waking up. The corridor had gone dim, dust still hanging in the air and sparks crackling quietly from ruined panels. Rafe sat slumped against the wall, blood drying on his brow, breathing hard. He had fought wars before, wars against machines, beasts, and aliens with eyes like knives. But never had he seen something like this. Kavir, just a baby, rested quietly in his mother's arms, his small face peaceful, his tiny chest glowing faintly with soft golden light. The storm was over, but its meaning had just begun. Lyria stood still, holding the child, her gaze distant and uncertain. For a long time, she didn't speak. She just stared down at her son like she was seeing him for the very first time, not just as a mother, but as someone who now understood the weight of what she carried. Rafe finally pushed himself up, groaning. What was that? He asked. Lyria looked at him slowly. Her voice trembled. I think it's his blood, she said. His light. I didn't know it was real. Not truly, Rafe frowned. Explain. She walked toward him carefully, her footsteps soft. The station lights flickered back to life, bathing them in dim gold. There's an old story among my people, she began. Before the war. Before we feared humans. Some believed there were bonds between our kinds. Not just treaties, but life itself. We shared knowledge, genes, maybe even love. Rafe blinked, surprised. A hybrid? Lyria nodded. Long ago, she said, there was a program, secret, forbidden. A group of scientists believed that a child born from both our species could hold the key to unity. They believed such a child could bridge the divide. Stronger body, smarter mind, immune to many diseases, and gifted with something more. She glanced down at Kavir. His glow had faded, but his breathing remained steady. They said the child would carry energy, the kind that doesn't come from machines or science. Something alive. Something that bends around danger. Something that protects. Rafe looked at her, stunned. But if that program was real, he said, why haven't we heard about it? Because it was destroyed, Lyria whispered. Before the project could finish, the war came. The labs were bombed. The records erased. Those who tried were hunted. She paused, eyes dark with memory. I was part of that project, not as a scientist. As a donor, I agreed, I believed. They used a sample from a human volunteer. They never told me his name. Just that he was kind, brave, willing to risk everything for peace. Rafe was silent. Lyria stared at her child. When I became pregnant, the war began. I ran, hid. My people called me a traitor. The humans called me an enemy. Only this child. Only he knew nothing of war. Her voice broke. I never expected he would survive. I thought, maybe I had made a mistake. But now she looked at Rafe. He saved us. Not with violence. Not with weapons, just with who he is. Rafe leaned against the wall, trying to absorb her words. A hybrid child. Not just a miracle, a symbol. Proof that human and alien blood could live together. Not in hatred, but in harmony. And now that secret was alive, breathing, blinking at him from the arms of a blue-skinned woman. If word gets out, Rafe muttered, they'll come for him. Lyria nodded. Yes, some will want to protect him. Others will want to destroy him. Either way, they won't let him live in peace. Rafe walked to the shattered viewport. Beyond it, the stars stretched on forever, endless, cold, watching. He felt small again. Do you think this was chance? He asked. Me finding you in that pod? Lyria stepped beside him. Her voice was quiet. No, she said. I think the universe is tired of our fighting. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rafe turned. We need to leave this place. Now. That captain. Dorn. If he survived, he'll bring more. I know, she said. But where will we go? Rafe tapped on the console, bringing up an old star chart. He pointed to a hidden moon on the edge of the map. There. A neutral world. No patrols. No colonies. Just silence and supplies, she asked. I've got stashes there. Old stuff. Enough to build something small. Enough to hide. Lyria looked at him with new eyes. You'd really do that? She asked. Hide us? Protect him. Rafe didn't hesitate. He saved me too, he said. Maybe not with light, but with purpose. Hours later, the Rustwing detached from the broken med station. Its engines roared softly in the void as it turned away from the drifting metal and the scars it carried. Inside, Lyria sat near the sleeping child. Her fingers brushed through his fine hair. A soft smile played on her lips. Rafe sat at the helm, eyes on the stars ahead. They didn't know what the future would bring. They didn't know who would chase them next. But they knew one thing. The child, Kavir, was not just theirs. He was the future, and he was awake, anew. Star rises, the stars stretched like quiet witnesses beyond the cracked cockpit window. The Rustwing, old and scarred, glided through the darkness like a forgotten dream. Its engines hummed low, steady. Beneath the hum, silence wrapped around the ship like a blanket. No sirens, no weapons, no screams. Just breath, and the soft heartbeat of something new. Rafe sat at the console, eyes locked on a distant moon that shimmered faintly on the star map. The world was nameless, tucked between gravity wells and solar debris, the kind of place even smugglers avoided. That was exactly why he chose it. Behind him, in the makeshift quarters, Lyria cradled Kavir in her arms. The child had not glowed again, not since the moment he defended them. But the warmth still lingered, not in fire or light, but in the air itself. Wherever Kavir went, the Rustwing felt lighter, like the ship itself had taken a breath for the first time in years. Rafe turned in his chair and watched them. Lyria had fallen asleep against the wall, her head resting gently on a rolled blanket, her arms wrapped tightly around the baby. Kavir's small hand twitched in sleep. His lips parted slightly. They looked like a family, and for the first time in a long time, Rafe didn't feel like a soldier. He felt like something more. They landed on the hidden moon at first light. The surface was covered in ice and stone. Pale clouds drifted low across the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched into the mountains. There were no cities, no ships, no threats, just silence broken only by the wind. Rafe stepped down from the ramp first, rifle slung across his back, scanning the terrain. Lyria followed, carrying Kavir in a sling against her chest. Her eyes widened as she looked around. Never in her life had she seen a world so quiet, so untouched. Is it safe? She asked, For now, Rafe replied. They spent the next days rebuilding. Rafe had hidden supplies in an old outpost, a shelter left over from an abandoned mining project. Solar panels still worked, filtration systems too. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough, and for the first time they stopped running. At night, when the child slept and the wind softened, Lyria would sit beside the fire and sing, not loudly, not with pride, but with memory. Her songs were old, fragments from a world that no longer existed. Rafe listened quietly. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. And as days passed, they began to laugh, not often, not loudly, but it was real, and real was rare. But peace, no matter how deep you bury it, never goes unnoticed for long. Somewhere far across the stars, Captain Dorn lay on an operating slab. His missing arm had been replaced. His burns healed with black market grafts, but his pride, his rage, burned hotter than ever. The child had humiliated him, and now, people were asking questions. A strange signal had escaped the med station before the system shut down. A data burst, encrypted short, but containing one vital detail: the biometric trace of Kavir's hybrid blood. Someone had seen it, someone had saved it, and someone wanted it. Not to protect, to control. Rafe knew this. He had worked long enough with mercenaries and thieves to know how secrets traveled. It wasn't a matter of if they'd be found, only when. So one night, while Lyria slept under the stars, Kavir curled against her chest. Rafe sat alone and opened the comm array. He stared at the blinking cursor. Thought long and hard, then he sent a message. Not a distress call, not a plea. Broadcast to the outer colonies, to the Dominions, edge to anyone who still believed peace was possible. Didn't name the child, he didn't mention species or sides, he said only this: there is a child born of both bloods, not a weapon, not a tool, a child, breathing proof that the war never needed to happen. If you believe in the future, protect the quiet places, not for me, for him. Then he cut the signal and let the stars carry the rest. The next morning, the sky was clear. Lyria joined him at the edge of the ridge, baby in her arms. You did something, she said softly. Rafe nodded. I started a fire, he admitted, but not the bad kind, the kind that might burn away the lies. She looked down at Kavir. Do you think they'll come for us? Eventually, he said. But we'll be ready. Lyria leaned against him, and the baby for the first time opened his eyes in the light of a new world. Not red. Not blue, golden, like a rising star. In the darkness between worlds, ships began to stir. Some carried fear, some carried hope. But none of them understood yet. The future had already begun, and it had a name.